Good morning. Are you alive? Just about barely, sometimes, right? Uh, yeah, all right. So we have um, kind of a passage, interesting story for today, and I need 5 volunteers. Okay, so I need narrator 1, I need narrator 2, I need Paul, I need Lydia, I need the jailer. Okay. Who's volunteering? Come on, guys. Thank you, Sunida. Please come. Who else? I need 4 more. Steve, all right. You've been volunteered. Okay, Jess and Steve. There you go. I need 1 more. Yeah, can you look backwards and see the father and son? Yeah, that's right. Okay, come. Great. All right, so I'll just give you the stuff and you can just decide what you want to be. And so it's, I did this very cool way of printing it. So when you open it, you have to open it like this. Okay, everyone getting it? Okay, tell me, so we're not getting into it right now, so you'll be standing here a little bit, if that's okay with you. Oh, they just don't like the standing, so there's, tell me one thing, which is the, you know that Wellspring is, and one of our values is outward facing, right? Do you know which is the greatest and most successful outreach strategy of all time? Did Danny say something? Oh, food. That works. Anybody else? Okay, look it up. Just do a Google search or something like that, right? The answer is actually church planting. Okay, and recently there was a very upsetting story in the news. Did you read it? About an organization that was using a whole bunch of credit cards to get money, to be able to do church planting, right? Some of us here are personally connected with that. And it's upsetting, it's discouraging. And one of the things that I was thinking about it is that actually we don't need it. We don't need that money. We don't need all that money from outside. We have everything we need right here. Right? And here I am starting with this story and talking to you about something, and you're not at all in that space, right? Sometimes I feel I'm not in that space. What's this church planting thing that you're talking about? I'm struggling. I have other things that I'm really struggling with right now. But that's the beauty of the series that we're doing. What's the name of the series right now? Anyone? Mended. And what did we finish? Broken. And broken was from where were the passages from? From the book of the Gospel of Luke. And where are the passages for the series Mended? From Acts. You've been paying attention. Yeah. The thing that I love about this is basically, is it that the people in Acts were fully mended people who were doing all of this crazy stuff? Not at all, right? Acts actually shows us what happens when broken people get caught up in the life of Jesus together. And I think the together is critical because Steve reminded us when we were talking about that guy Cornelius and that crazy guy Peter. What happens when you invest or when you get involved in somebody else's growth? What happens to you? You grow, right? And the growth is a together growth. We are growing together. Cornelius grew, and we think that story is all about Cornelius, but then we realize that the story is all about Peter. And so Luke shows us brokenness. Acts shows us what happens when broken people become mended together. Yeah. And I feel like, the last week or so is probably one of the toughest weeks of my last year, maybe. And I'm with you if you feel like, what are you talking about, all this outreach thing? I'm just barely managing to survive. I don't know how many of us feel that way. And yet that's the hope. And that's the counterintuitive method of the gospel sometimes, right? So Cornelius was welcomed, everyone was included. All of us are works in progress. As Peter served Cornelius, Cornelius served Peter. But here's what happened. Do you know that when that incident with Cornelius led to an explosion in a city called Antioch? Do you know what happened in Antioch? A church was planted and it grew. You know why? That church was planted among people who are not Jews. Why was it possible? It was possible because what happened between Cornelius and Peter. And then what happened? And what did that church do? That church sent people to different places. And the story of today is in the middle of that. And at the end of all of this, do you know what happened? Another church got planted. Which one is that? The church at Philippi. Do you know there's a whole book written to them? The book of Philippians. And so on and so forth and so on and so forth. And guess what? Where are you and I sitting? You and I are a part of that cycle and that multiplication process. We are all sitting here. We are all sitting in a community and we are all benefiting from that community. Right? So someone showed up for us. Someone was present for us. Someone prayed for us by name, without sometimes us even knowing it. You and I are in this room because exactly what we are about to study, what we are about to look at together. What did we just hear? A dramatic jailbreak, a series of lucky encounters, or something else altogether? Let me tell you what it was not. It was not exotic. It was not a specially designed spiritual program. Do you see any planning happening there? There was a woman on the riverside. There was a girl on a street. There was a jailer at midnight. This is not a dramatic story. This is Tuesday. And yet, this Tuesday, like we said earlier, became the church at Philippi. So the adventure was not somewhere else. It was hiding inside something which might feel ordinary, right? Now, let me ask you, we use the word apostles, right, for all of these people. Are you familiar with that? Are you familiar with the word apostles? Does anyone know what that means? Right. That's one who is sent. And what do they actually do? They are sent and do what? Okay, share the gospel. Anyone else? Here's what they do. They basically are pioneers, right? They're like entrepreneurs. They go into a new place and they start doing stuff. And then what these people did was they created new communities and put Jesus at the center of those communities. That's essentially what all of these apostles were doing, right? What do we call those communities? Church. Yeah? The church. So that's what they were doing. And here's where we assume that all of this is not relevant to us, right? This is where we begin to see, oh, this is about somebody else. They traveled. We are not traveling. They were commissioned. We are not commissioned. So we think. But sent might not just mean relocated, right? Sent can mean placed. So you did not end up in your neighborhood or your workplace or your family cycle or wherever you are working by accident. You were placed there, sent. And I know that all of us are not going to be pioneers and entrepreneurs the way the apostles were. But all of us are sent and placed wherever we are placed, right? So you may not be going anywhere, but you have been placed somewhere. And it's not a lesser calling. It's the same one. And so, this story that we just heard, we said it's not a program, right? It wasn't planned. Can you plan it? Can you plan that I'm going to go out and I'm going to be, sitting I'm going to look for a place of prayer and there will be a bunch of ladies who will just happen to be there. You can't plan that. You can't plan that when you're going about your day, there's a girl out there and who's doing fortune telling. You can't plan that, right? You can definitely not plan the fact that you're going to be in jail, right? And somehow there's going to be an earthquake. You don't plan that, right? And the fact that the jailer will come to you and say, "What must I do to be saved?" You can't plan that. And so this was not a program, but this was also not an accident. And we'll talk about why it was not an accident. Let's talk about the 3 encounters, right? What part of this, you tell me, was accidental, and what part of this was not? Your time. Anyone? Okay? None of it was accidental. And it wasn't accidental because God was planning it, right? Yes, makes sense. Now, if you want to transfer that question to the people involved, as far as they were concerned, how was it? It's actually obvious. Maybe I'm just making it sound like there's some very big mystery behind this. But the obvious thing is that they had planned to be there in that city. Right? That was also a God thing, but that was something they knew. Did they know that? They had decided to go there. Is that fair enough? Right? And they made extensive plans and preparations and all of that to go to that place. It took a lot of time, and interestingly, it took a lot of push and pull with God. If you read the beginning of this particular chapter, it talks about why Jesus actually, the Spirit of Jesus said, don't go here, don't go here, don't go here. And then there was a dream in which they saw a man from Macedonia, which is Greece, which is where Philippi is part of Macedonia, saying, can you come and help us? Right? And so, in response to that, they planned to be there. And then they found these three people. Lydia is very similar to Cornelius. Something about Cornelius, he was already drawn to God, right, before he came. And he wanted clarification on what this really meant, so he came to Peter. Do you see a similarity with Lydia? Because in that scripture that we just read, it said she was a worshiper of God. She was a worshiper of God, it said. And yet, she needed an additional piece to complete her understanding of who God was, and Paul and Silas and Timothy provided that. Who was a fortune-telling woman? The fortune-telling woman was someone in bondage, right? So she carried this spirit of Python, as they say, in the spirit that was mentioned, the spirit of Python. It's a specific, spirit that the people of that time understood. We don't. And it had, this whole Greek mythological weight to it. And when she said these men are, followers of the Most High God, that must have meant quite a few different things to different people, right? Zeus, most probably, for the people who were there. And so you understand a little bit of why Paul got annoyed when you think that, oh man, she was actually saying all the right things. Why are you annoyed with that? But maybe even more, Paul was annoyed because of what was happening to her. Paul was annoyed because of her situation. Paul was annoyed because she was in bondage. She was being used as a slave by these people who were making money out of that. And Paul, and you wonder, why did it take so much time to do that? Why days? The passage says it's a few days. And sometimes you wonder why. It doesn't say. But the rest of the passage makes it a little bit clear why. Because he probably already saw what was coming. Right? He could see the system at work. And here he was fighting against that system and breaking it at personal cost. Right? That was the fortune-telling woman, breaking of a bondage. And then the jailer, he was the one in crisis, right? The crisis is what opened his heart. He was not seeking theology. He was actually at the edge of his life. I don't know what kind of a weird question is that. You imagine yourself in that situation where, there's this earthquake and you're worried that, there's a bunch of people who've run away. And then some of them say, no, we are still here. And then he's really relieved. And then he's asking the question, what must I do to be saved? What kind of question is that? Is that normal? I still don't know what he was thinking. But Paul definitely knew what he needed in answer to that. And whatever answer Paul gave, he received gladly. Not only did he receive gladly, he said, come home and tell my family also. So this church was born through conversations, interruptions, suffering, hospitality, responsiveness, and presence. 3 very different people. There's a wealthy businesswoman, an enslaved girl, a Roman jailer. No strategy could have done that. Just don't know enough to make a strategy for that. None of these encounters might have made the news, but all of them changed the world, which is why we sit here. This is probably a little bit of what church planting might look like. And let's talk about how. So if there was no what was the strategy? I keep saying there's no strategy, there's no plan, but there might have been. And when you listen carefully, what is it? The first one, pretty obvious, prayer and a relationship with God, right? Because that's why they knew where to go and where not to go. And they were excited about doing this. And they were excited about doing this because they had a relationship with God, and that is what made them excited. And they were excited enough to be able to bear the cost, to be able to take the time, to be able to go take a ship and go to a different city. And that came out of a relationship with God. And even while they were there, being in communion with God and praying was such an important part, which is how the Spirit of Jesus was leading them into different places. And the most important thing, they were in a place, and this is really critical, they were in a place because of which the external circumstances did not change how they were internally. I can't imagine being held in a prison with my feet in stocks and having received a whipping, sitting there and singing songs and praises to God. I can't imagine doing that. And that brings us right back, perhaps, to some of the circumstances that we might be facing. Some of the things that are drawing us down, pulling us down, making us tired and weary, and wanting us to withdraw into a shell. Maybe we deserve better. Maybe we have been promised different. This does not mean that the trials and the tribulations and the challenges that we go through are to be undermined. But it does mean that in my communion and my relationship with God, I don't have to let these things pull me down. I can sing. I can worship. Prayer and a relationship with God. 2, presence. Right? We said there's no strategy, but the strategy was presence. I go. I am there. I am in the middle of that. I am there. I have no clue what's going to happen. But I'm doing my bit of being just there where God has put me, where He's going to do something. And I'll figure that out, or maybe usually later on, what He did. So they traveled extensively just to get to Philippi. They were there, and it was their presence was not just physical. Their presence was of their mind, of their heart. There was no divided attention. Does that feel challenging? No divided attention. There was no performance. Their investment was presence before it became ministry. So you know what presence would mean for us. You know what's the greatest challenge to presence? Anyone? For you and me today? What's the greatest challenge? Traffic. Okay, that's one. What else? But you're present inside the traffic. Presence, anyone? What's the challenge to presence? My phone, yeah. The distraction. The news. That problem that I need to solve, which is weighing on me. You know, that interaction that I had that makes me feel down. But how can I still be present because of what we said earlier? Because God gives us that grace to be present. But at least we ought to know that it is fundamental. Our presence is fundamental. So when I'm talking to you, am I paying attention? When I'm going around in the marketplace, am I paying attention or am I distracted? Do you know that you can sit with somebody who you've probably known for 20 years and ask a few questions to them and discover something new about them? Imagine how much more you can discover something about people you have not known for 20 years, but who are right around you where you've been placed. Just because you're paying attention. And the third thing is responsiveness. All right? So, no strategy, but I will respond based on the trigger that comes. You notice that? Triggers. The fortune teller triggering Paul, annoying him. Lydia just happening to be there where they went for prayer. And in response to that, they started talking about the good news that they came. They hadn't planned it, but they saw that and they responded. What happened with the jailer? What must I do to be saved? Like we said, we still don't know what that meant, but Paul knew what they needed. Responsiveness, right? Do you notice how easily they move between different kinds of people? Wealthy merchants. That was Lydia. Enslaved people, the Roman authorities, prisoners, jailers. They were able to be present for all of them. They were able to pay attention to all of them. And they were able to respond to all of them in the most appropriate way that they all needed. Prayer and relationship with God. Presence with the people around us, paying attention and being responsive to the people based on the triggers you get. And the final one at the end of that passage, we notice that there was a placement into community. Do you notice at the end of the whole thing when the magistrate says, all right, you can leave. They leave the jail, but before they leave the city, they go into that room where Lydia is present and others are present, and then they strengthen them together as they move beyond, right? And you get a sense of now an apostle's complete cycle. Prayer, presence, responsiveness, community. Meals, that's where the food comes in, Danny. Exactly right. Because food is sometimes important in community. There was a whole bunch of food things that happened in Acts which caused problems in Corinthians. But food is important. But community. So the community was present from day one, right? Broken people become mended people become communities. And these communities change the world. You know, at the turn of the century, there were 25,000 approximate Christians. In 300 years, they became 3 million. Because of this. And you know what? This continues even today. Now, you might be wondering, you know, how do I participate in this? What is it? What is it that I can do to be a part of this? How can I do all of this community building, being present, and all of that stuff, responsive? Do you sometimes feel like it requires a lot of training, and it requires a lot of, knowledge, it requires a lot of cleverness and all of that? Do you feel like that sometimes? To be able to do this? How can I suddenly know what everyone wants to know? You can't. And so here's the part where I'm going to, there are a few people. I had a list of 4 or 5 names who I know here who engage in these kind of things, which are not programmatic, like they're not part of an organization that does that, but they just do it. And I know that Augustine is one of them. Goes around and just talks to people, right? Not from this church. That's not part of his job. We just go there and we talk to people, have conversations with them, and you do that repeatedly. Is that right, Augustine? Yeah? Why do you do that?
Something prompts in me to do that. Yeah, the Spirit.
And do you feel all the time qualified for it?
No. But He enables.
Kezia, I told her I'm going to take an interview. So she doesn't know what I was going to ask her. She asked me to tell her what. I said, no, then it's not authentic.
You didn't say that, you just didn't answer me.
So, how did that conversation with your musician friends even begin?
Do you want me to sit here? Just the general spiritual stuff conversation. I have happened to have a bunch of conversations about like faith and God with a couple of my friends that I did not expect to have them with. I think it just started with, actually it wasn't even me who did the reaching out, it was these people. One of my friends specifically calls, intentionally and just has conversations, and I think we just started talking about so many things, probably in the context of music first. And then, I think faith is kind of impossible not to bring into music, because it's a big part of like where you operate from, where you write from, where you create from.
Do you see yourself as some kind of a theologian or an expert in faith to be able to have those conversations?
Yes. No, not at all.
Were you surprised by how open people were to talk to you about deeper questions?
Yeah, I think it was really nice actually to see that actually almost everybody is searching. And just because it's not in the same language as you, or it's not in the same space, doesn't mean it's not happening. And it was, yeah, like probably more genuine than I've seen in a lot of people in my life. So yeah, it was surprising.
What would you say to someone here who feels, I don't know enough of the Bible to talk to people about faith?
I would say that you really don't have to do as much talking as you have to do listening, and just kind of engaging with people like you're normal. Like, you don't have to be this great answerer of questions. You just kind of have to be a human being who's honest about what happens in your life and the things that you struggle with. And you do have experience. I mean, whatever that is, it doesn't have to be all your studies from your morning Bible reading. It just has to be your experience of your faith and your relationship. And it's an exchange a lot more than it is a monologue.
So what do you think helped create a space where people felt comfortable to have those conversations?
Some of what I said already, which is being honest, because I think that disarms people when you're able to be like, yeah, I don't know, man. Like, I'm figuring this out. Also asking questions. I mean, just listening to what people are saying and asking intentional questions about who they are to begin with. Like, you don't jump straight into what you believe. But there's so much more. It's so much about the person as a whole, and having curiosity and being interested in who they are and wanting to connect and finding those points where you can connect and relate, and that it's easier to get comfortable that way.
Thank you. Most of us are already surrounded by people. The question is whether we are present, attentive, prayerful, and willing